Batman has been severely watered down by DC Comics lately, and it appears we are getting the lamest Batman crossover series of all times, possibly. And here to talk to me about that is my good friend Doc. How you doing, Doc?
Jesus Christ, can they stop repeating themselves?
Yes, they are basically going back to the same exact well they've been doing for about the last 5 years yet. This is the information that we do have. DC has unveiled the next chapter in its ongoing Dawn of DC event, and Batman and Catwoman's often turbulent relationship is set to take a drastic turn for the worse. Batman Catwoman The Gotham War sees Selina Kyle take on the mantle of crime boss, leading the sometimes allies, sometimes lovers to go to war against each other. The event, which is written by Chip Zdarsky and Tini Howard, will open with the special one-shot before continuing in the main Batman and Catwoman solo books, as well as a pair of 2-issue miniseries, The Gotham War Red Hood and The Gotham War Scorched Earth. So we're going to go to war over Gotham again. We didn't see that in City of Bane or the Joker War at all, Doc. This is really, really inventive stuff. This is ground that has never been covered before in the history of DC Comics, let alone 2 or 3 times in the last 5 years.
I think you forgot the war of jokes and riddles too, but regardless, yeah. This is them just doing the exact same shit. How many times? If you go back even further, like No Man's Land, Bruce Wayne Fugitive, all those other ones that they've done over the years, you're not breaking any new ground here. You're not doing something that hasn't been done. You're not even doing something that hasn't been done in a while. You're just doing the same shit that you were doing like every 6 months for about 3 years.
The only thing that appears to be somewhat new-ish, I guess, is Selina Kyle becoming the crime boss of Gotham City, which is pretty hard to believe in a city with Joker, Penguin, and all these other major crime bosses, that somehow Selina Kyle would become the number one.
Honestly, all they're doing is just copying exactly what Dan Slott did on Spider-Man anyway, where they randomly decided to turn Black Cat into the crime boss of New York City. They did that for like 2-3 years. Even though she had her on again, off again thing with Peter, now she suddenly hated him and was the crime boss of New York City. When there's like a million other possible crime bosses that are obviously much more qualified for it than a jewelry thief.
Yeah, that's just a jewelry thief.
Yeah,
she's not a murderer. She's not a terrorist. She's none of that stuff.
And all they're doing is the exact same thing. I mean, fuck, Catwoman and Black Cat are the same character to begin with.
Absolutely, so, this feels more like Fish Mooney than the Penguin taking over Gotham City. You know what I mean? Did you ever watch that in that stupid Gotham show?
On that Gotham show, yeah, the one where it was
Fish Mooney, one of the worst characters I've ever seen in anything. Period. Just what a terrible character. You couldn't take Jada Pinkett Smith seriously. She was a terrible actress and a terrible person to play that role.
The least terrifying potential crime boss in human history. And this is exactly the same thing. For a crime boss, you gotta be at least scary. Catwoman's not even remotely scary. I mean, they tried to do like, oh, Jada Pinkett Smith as Fish Mooney. She was sexy scary, except for she's not. And neither's Catwoman. In the current incarnation, she is not sexy scary either. She's not even like
she's
sexy
smart enough
crazy
to be able to navigate the waters of Gotham City and all the crime bosses without upsetting them and making them murder her, but also not get caught all the time by Batman. So she's an effective low-level criminal, and that's it.
Yeah. The minute she'd cross one of these actually big-time crime bosses that are in the city, they'd put a bullet in her head and it wouldn't and just move on with their day.
But, you know, Batman's got to fight somebody. He's already fought Bane. He already fought Joker. He already fought Robin. Now he's got to fight his girlfriend, apparently. This new Dawn of DC event follows hot on the heels of July and August line-wide Night Terror saga and will pick up directly after Night Terror's Batman #2 by Josh Williamson. Chip Zdarsky and Tini Howard are the current writers of DC's core Batman and Catwoman titles, respectively. This crossover gave the pair the chance to work together on shifting the status quo in Gotham City. This is madness. Chip Zdarsky is barely a cell on Batman as the main writer. You know, we have seen its place as the top-selling comic book in the entire industry fall down, even though Spider-Man sucks, because Chip Zdarsky isn't a name unto himself. But Tini Howard might as well be comic book kryptonite. You put her on a series and the sales just die. They just named an award after her on comicbookrevolution.com the Tini Howard Award for most dead titles walking because every ongoing she has just absolutely dies. No one's looking for a Chip Zdarsky, Tini Howard crossover anything.
Her name on a cover is the event horizon of comics, from which no creativity, no sales, and no stories actually escape. And Chip Zdarsky really isn't anything to even offset that. It was one thing whenever it was Jonathan Hickman, his name trying to offset the name of Tini Howard and her being a black hole. And I don't mean to be, disparaging here, because I guess he's all right. He's still losing readers on Batman. That's hard to do at this point. If Tom King didn't lose the readers on Batman and Chip Zdarsky is, that's saying...
Well, no. Tom King absolutely lost readers on Batman. That's why he got removed. He was actually like the number 4 selling title by the time Tom King was done with it.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's a good point.
But James Tynion wasn't doing anything special either, and he didn't lose readers. He was gated readers somehow.
Yeah, well, it was all the readers that Tom King lost that came back just because it made it readable again. It might not have been great. It might not have been spectacular. It definitely wasn't mind-blowing in any way. But it was the longtime Batman readers that normally wouldn't have quit, but just couldn't continue supporting Tom King.
The other crazy thing about this, Doc, is there's a lot of Batman fans that probably have never read a Tini Howard comic book in their life. And maybe they're going to go out there and read this, and you're going to subject them to that and make them realize you've hired one of the worst generic Stephanie writers in the entire industry, and you put her on this big crossover. Probably not going to exactly endear longtime Batman or even DC fans to the publisher itself. She's that bad.
Now, I guess the question would be whether or not this is going to end up being a negative for the line is whether or not reading Catwoman 57 and 58 is going to be absolutely necessary, or if they are going to be kind of the typical
chapters in the story.
Well, yeah, but a lot of the recent crossovers have been like, well, if you don't want to read those chapters, you kind of don't have to. They're telling similar stories from another perspective.
What you're talking about is an event series where you have an event series and then you have stuff happening on the periphery in the mainline titles. There's no event series here. The story is in Batman and Catwoman.
I figured maybe we get lucky and it was an event series, considering that it starts with a one shot.
Well, everything's got to have a one shot.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Got to have an alpha and an omega, Doc. You got to have a number 1 issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. A lot of people are going to be exposed for the first time to the fact that Tini Howard is a sales black hole.
No, they're going to think they're reading Stephanie Phillips, and they're going to realize this is a different person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they will.
Not really.
No, it's really not. It's just another generic Stephanie.
Thankfully for you and I, Doc, Tini Howard did let people know that she didn't know what she was talking about. This was her quote. Comics thrive on team-ups, whether it's a team of creators trying to say that she's like A-lister or something, or a heroic partnership. All of my favorite stories are about 2 strong personalities and the space between them. On the page, we've got one of comics' greatest love stories, the world's greatest detective and the world's greatest criminal. And they both love Gotham, but the course of true love never did run smooth. Something stupid like that. Is Batman and Catwoman one of the greatest love stories in comics history? I always thought it was a weird pairing.
It's not anywhere close to one of the best love stories in comics history. It was always a unique, well, somewhat unique, sort of love story, but it was always a love-hate story about how these two people fundamentally couldn't get along, yet still wanted the bone. I don't feel like that's a great love story. I feel like that's a okay lust story.
It's a trashy romance novel about a girl on her summer vacation.
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, look, I'm sorry, but you don't even reach like cheesy Hallmark movie status with this love story. And
no, it's not even one of the 10 best in comic book history. And then Tini Howard claims that Selena Kyle Catwoman is the world's greatest criminal.
She might be the world's greatest thief.
There's a big difference. Once you get in the whole world of criminal, we're talking murder, espionage, we're talking, terrorism and all these things. Her rap sheet is minuscule in comparison to a lot of these criminals just in Gotham City, let alone the entire DC Comics universe.
Look, I'm sorry, but when you compare stealing some jewels or picking some pockets and you put that up against, I mean, even of the rich, the top 1% or the top 1% of the 1%, even if you're robbing from them, it still doesn't compare to, I don't know, running protection rings and, blackmailing politicians and
Harley Quinn murdered a city full of children.
Yes. I'm pretty sure that makes her a worse criminal or at least
criminal,
a bigger criminal.
Yes.
Yeah. Like her level of criminality vastly exceeds that of Selina Kyle.
It's all just charts compared to Catwoman, and that's not even taken in consideration. Joker's worse than her.
Yes. It's not even taking into consideration how bad Lex is.
He stole an election, Doc.
I know. These people, they have no concept of what makes a great criminal. I mean, maybe because
she's a girl, Doc. She's a girl boss criminal. That's why she's the world's greatest criminal.
But even Harley still beats her, so
exactly.
No.
It's stupid. And then saying Selina Kyle loves Gotham City.
Does she?
I have not read every single Catwoman story in the history of the world, but I've read plenty. And I've never gone, you know what? She might love Gotham just as much as Bruce.
Yeah. At no point does it ever feel like Gotham even matters to her. It just happens to be the location where she's at. And the fact that it's ripe for her to steal shit. That's what it comes down to. She likes Gotham because it provides her the opportunity to steal shit of which she's good at. If she was in Bloodhaven, she'd be just as happy. She'd be less happy in Metropolis because it's a little less
Superman.
Yeah, because there's a little less criminal opportunities there. But if she's in San Francisco, if she's in New York, if she's in one of, Coast City, Star City, any of the other fictional DC cities, she'd probably like it just as much as Gotham, except for the fact that there's fewer people for the heroes to be distracted by.
But now she's going to take over the city and go to war with Batman. Someone that she knows she can't beat.
So they're turning her into Queen Pin. Look, I'm used to Marvel copying DC with what they're going to do with Black Cat compared to what has been done with Catwoman 5 years ago. Now DC is just copying what Marvel did with Black Cat 5 years ago. And it seems really, really boring. I already read this. This is going to be the sad commentary. I read it by a better writer. And I'm considering Dan Slott a better writer than Tini Howard on this.
In a whole nother league of writer, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, at least he's not a complete sales black hole.
Absolutely not. He can still write a story. He's actually written a good comic book story, at least in his life. He's actually written a few of them. Tini Howard has yet to do that. And but there you go, Doc. That's the big Dawn of DC crossover. Batman, Catwoman, the Gotham War as they go and fight each other.
And yet somehow they're starting it tying into the middle of the Night Terrors event. What the fuck?
Tini Howard is an absolute boil on the ass of the comic book industry. If you don't believe me, she's always out there on her Substack talking about how great she is, how we're really getting it done. But every time she's doing this, her sales are absolutely dying and her comic books are getting canceled. If you haven't seen this video, me taking Tini Howard to task, check it out right now. There's also a link in the video description.